Hello and welcome to our interview. The goal of these interviews is to delve into different parts of Ernie Davis's life and kind of get a feeling of possibly what his life was like and also how his life relates to the modern context of our world and all the different situations that we go through and experiences that we have in our life as well that might be shared with him and let us gain a better understanding of Ernie Davis and his life. My name is Chloe Freeland. I am white. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a senior at Corning Painted Post High School. I am very excited to have Gyasi join me today for our interview about leadership and young activism. So Gyasi, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Gyasi Ruffin. I use he, him pronouns. I'm an athlete at Corning Painted Post High School, and I'm also an activist.
Awesome. Starting off with the activist portion, can you kind of explain a little bit about how you became involved in, I guess, activism, either through the Black Lives Matter movement or any other like different groups that you agree with?
I first started hearing about it when I was it was elementary school. My parents, they would have to pull us in, me and my siblings, into the living room to talk about this stuff. Like when Tamir Rice got shot, we had to have a discussion about that because it was before we were moving back to the United States. From 2014 to 2016, we lived in Taiwan, and before we moved back, our parents had to have a lot of conversations with us about what it would be like interacting with the police upon returning. So I think that it started with those conversations, and then it just kind of evolved as I got older. Like throughout middle school, I would write research papers about police brutality and stuff like that. And then it just kept evolving from there, and I kept getting more and more involved in stuff.
That's really interesting. Do you think, you mentioned that you move and there's definitely different, I guess, attitudes towards people of color in all different places around the world.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, can you like expand on that a little bit more?
I think, well, it's a little bit hard to comment on because I was really young at the time. I feel like there were definitely some moments where I knew something was up, and I knew it had to do with being Black. Like there were times where we were waiting for an Uber to come pick us up, and then we would be sitting on the steps of some like convenience store or something, and then a person working in the store would ask us to move, but before we sat down, there was someone else who was there with no problem. And I think I also noticed it in school. My my fourth grade teacher in particular, I feel like he definitely had a bit of a problem with me. Um, he was constantly underestimating all of the work that I was turning in and things like that. I was getting in trouble for things that other kids were doing. So, I mean, I can't really say that the experience is different outside of the United States because, I mean, honestly, it's really not.
That's interesting. Thank you for sharing. You've definitely started taking a lot more actions towards solving problems in social justice and like fighting racism and stuff like that by being a part of conversations and discussions as well as like attending Black Lives Matter protests and stuff like that. And can you kind of explain like what drives you to take action in joining all of those things?
Honestly, I think I'm mostly driven by the fact that it just doesn't make sense to me. In elementary school, when they were teaching us about slavery and stuff like that, like segregation, it never made sense to me why it had to be that way. Because honestly, there's no reason why systemic racism needs to exist. It's become so normal in society. It's people are just getting too used to it, and I don't think that's healthy for a functioning society. The thought of not having to see people and hear about people go through these traumatic experiences because of factors beyond their control, I think that would be, it's I think it's a good fight to be a part of.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This is in both like a part of experiences as a young person being involved in social justice movements. Like, how do you think young people are able to make a difference, and why do you think it's important that young people are involved in things like this?
I think it's important because young people kind of set the stage for future generations. If we can teach young people to oppose things like racism, sexism, homophobia, then I think that as society progresses, as people are taught to reject it rather than just live with it, then that's a major sign of improvement. And starting with young people, like I said before, they set the context for the next couple generations. So I mean, if we can get a whole bunch of young people in on it, then I think that's a good place to start.
So I definitely think our lives, and definitely I think America in general, is kind of, it's almost repeating itself of when Ernie Davis was in college and about our age as well. He went to college in the very early 1960s, when the civil rights movement was on the rise, and just like in America now, the Black Lives Matter movement is on the rise. And it feels very parallel, and I was wondering how you feel being, I guess, like a student and an activist and a leader, and how does this kind of whole experience make you feel?
I feel like on one hand, it's frustrating that this has to go on after so many years. But then I think on the other hand, it's hard to put it into words. I guess it's good to know that there's still that there's people who haven't just given up. I think it's inspiring that that this fight has been going on for so long, that it's been going on for centuries, and the fact that it hasn't. I think the best way to put it is it's frustrating because the fact that it hasn't gotten as good as people want it to be, that is, I don't appreciate that fact. But the fact that not everyone has given up is, I think that's motivating to me.
Yeah, I can see that, how it would be like almost tiring, but at the same time inspirational. I don't know. Have you ever faced any challenges in trying to bring progress and like push for progress in America or in your community?
I think the biggest challenge is it's really difficult to get through to people in order to change their minds, because everyone wants to believe so badly that they're right, that when you present them with information that counters their beliefs, they hold on to their beliefs even tighter. But just the, I think, persistence and staying rational about it rather than just cramming it down everyone's throats, I think that is a better way to get through to people. No matter what the response is, if you're staying calm, then I guess you still have that over them, that you are able to stay composed, presenting people with information. And like I was saying before, in the youth forum, if you structure it as a discussion instead of a debate, then I feel like it's easier to get through to people, because it's not like you're trying to prove one side is right, but it's more exploring all of these topics and trying to find a solution to it.
Yeah, and it's a lot of education too. Like you talked about, like information and kind of just learning like what actually is racism, and why is it systemic? How is it systemic? And then how do you kind of break that down?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of learning and like awareness and everything like that, which can be very difficult to start, I guess. So this is kind of like a little bit of from the discussion that we had last time about kind of equity in our school, as well as a little bit of Ernie Davis as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so Ernie Davis is a role model. He, like the Elmira School is named after him. He's constantly kind of brought up as a hometown hero and for his achievements, being the first Black person to win the Heisman Trophy. And he was also the first pick in the NFL draft in 1962. And so kind of linking that to the conversation that we had about equity in schools and needing to have role models, needing to have speakers that represent the students, needing to have teachers that represent the students and books that represent the students, and kind of just having these models out there for everyone in the school. Can you expand on the importance of having that role model and kind of the impact of that role model on either an individual or a community?
I think it's really important to have role models, to just have yourself represented in especially in school, because for young people of color, like to be in school and to read about and watch in movies, like and seeing no one that looks like you, I feel like that's detrimental to their mindset in the future. So yeah, I think it's really important that we have a diverse cast of role models in schools, whether it's like athletes or musicians, actors, or even, just superheroes, that something that young kids can look up to and aspire to be. I think that's really important. And I think it's good to have going forward, to know, so that that you're not the only one who wants to be in this field or who wants to do this with their lives.
Let's see. I think we're getting kind of closer towards the end of this interview. Continuing on the role model topic, I was wondering how you feel Ernie Davis kind of fills this role. He's definitely a role model for sports because he is very prominent in football. And he also attended Syracuse University, which is a good university. And I was wondering if you're ever inspired by him or how you think other people might be in our community.
I think, yeah, his story definitely is inspiring to me. I guess him as a role model, I think it ties back to what I was saying before about just having, diverse role models within schools, like so that young people can have someone to look up to, like having the high school named after him. I think that's really cool, because there's a lot of Black students there that just have, that have someone to look up to, have someone to aspire to be. I think it's great that we have an example of more diverse role models in our community. Just, this area being really small, I think it's extra special seeing it where it's not more performative than it is meaningful. It's easy for a major city to rename a high school after somebody, but for it to be named after a Black athlete here, I think that's really meaningful, just because it's in a place where not very many people are going to see it. So it's not to get publicity.
That's
You're
interesting.
doing it to actually
Yeah,
honor their career.
that's awesome. And so, what is the most significant thing you've learned either from yourself, from the people around you, from being involved in a discussion or protest or movement? Like, this most significant thing you've learned ever?
I think the most significant thing is that empathy is a really good thing to have. It's easy to get lost when you don't have it. Like the fact that there are people who can hear about these who can hear about these tragedies that happen to people who are killed by the police, or people who are killed in hate crimes, and they're able to justify it because of something that happened in their past. I don't understand how you can do that in good conscience. And I think that with empathy prevents you from being able to do that. It's a good thing to have, because it reminds you that terrible things are happening to people and you have an ability to do something about it. So, why wouldn't you do something about it if you can and you feel for another person?
Thank you. And so, final question. How do you relate to Ernie Davis and kind of what aspects of his life do you think you share?
There's the athlete portion that I can think of off the top of my head. I think having, like I was saying before about role models, for lack of a better word, I think it's amazing to be able to have him as a role model, I guess, because obviously the space of, I guess, athletes during the high point of his career wasn't very welcoming to Black people. So I think that having more and more as generations go by, I think that's really cool for a lot of young athletes of color to have that one person to remind them of what they're working for. And I hope that I can be I can be that to someone in my future.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So that is
Yeah.
the end of today's interview. Thank you so much, Gyasi, for joining me. And yeah, have a good day. All right.
You too. Bye.